Hello again, everyone. Um, this is going to be part two of errors in 8 schools. But before I go on, um, I may actually make this an independent, like an intermediary video between parts one and part two, because this is a very, very, very key, important thing to understand completely and remind yourself of as you study the many, many texts of Buddhism. This is also a good key to just life in general. Um, I'm going to read you a couple of sections, not very long, from the there we go, the Lankavatara Sutra. This is one of the very early texts or teachings or sermons given by Shakyamuni Buddha uh, that established the Mahayana as opposed to the earlier, less complete teachings. With the Lankavatara Sutra and one or two others, the scholarship shifts, and what starts to be discussed now on top of previous knowledge is, now that you understand the first 3 or 4 phases of my teaching, now you're ready. You have the capacity to understand what I'm now going to tell you. And actually, being as this is one of the first Mahayana scripture or sutras, I noticed while reading it and rereading it, and you may notice too, that there are parts in it where Shakyamuni sounds like he's just a tad bit frustrated, that the capacity he's giving credit to these followers and disciples, they're still struggling with, and they shouldn't be. So he gets just a tad bit, he doesn't get angry, but you can tell that he's like, look. And actually, this is one of those moments. So you'll hear it doesn't sound angry, but there is a little bit of counterpoint point. You have to understand the whole sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra, is a discourse between Shakyamuni Buddha and Mahamati, who is a bodhisattva who is on the cusp of entering his final stages of bodhisattva. So he's on that fulcrum, and Shakyamuni is teaching him, not just for him, but for all bodhisattvas. And Mahamati gets into this back and forth where he gets to the point of questioning everything Shakyamuni's saying, and he's getting into the semantics. And do you mean when you say da 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 da? Which Shakyamuni happily answers, because that's part of the learning process, to be able to understand what's being told him. But at some point it digresses, and Mahamati starts showing examples of other things. And what happens is Mahamati is actually, he's stuck on the words now. He's talking like many of us do today. We get stuck in the exact language of something, either because we're debating, and that's a tool of debate, or we're suddenly so enamored with the actual language, the words being used, that we fool ourselves into thinking that the answer, the ultimate answer, I will discover just by getting the words perfect. A lot of people do that in study. It's somewhat validated in some cases, but it's always an obstacle. There's not a subject that you can take on where, when you get to the point where you stop having the little ahas in your mind, and you're just struggling with the language of it, and you think, well, the answer's here. I just got to read this right. Um, and the message here is about words versus meaning. So here we go. He's been talking about the different peoples. They talk about emptiness and suchness and truth and reality and limit of reality and nirvana. All these terms, just taking them apart, right? And finally, so I'm just going to dive in somewhere because you got the basic idea. Okay, so he's talking about some his disciples, the people who are studying this stuff, but they're stuck in the lower worlds. They're not in the bodhisattva train, or even many of the bodhisattvas that haven't reached the level of Mahamati, including Mahamati. And he's saying, and so everybody who doesn't get what he's saying is obviously ignorant of the meaning of what he's saying. So I'm just going to pick it up from there. This is Shakyamuni, and he's saying, but this is not understood by the ignorant who have fallen into the dualistic conception of continuity. They, though they honor, praise, esteem, and revere me, they do not understand well the meaning of words and definitions. They do not distinguish ideas. They do not have their own truth. And clinging to the words of the canonical books, they imagine that not being subject to birth and destruction means a non-entity, and fail to see that it is one of the many names of the Tathagata, as in the case of Indra, or Shakra, or Pundarara. They have no confidence in the text where the self-standing truth is revealed, since in their study of all things, they follow mere words as expressed in the text, trying thereby to gain into the meaning. Thus, Mahamati, these deluded ones would declare that as words are, so is meaning, that meaning is not otherwise than words. For what reason? Because meaning has no body of its own and cannot be different from words. That the unintelligent declare words to be identical with meaning is due to their ignorance as to the self-nature of words. They do not know, Mahamati, that words are subject to birth and death, whereas meaning is not. Mahamati, words are dependent on letters, but meaning is not. As meaning is freed from existence and non-existence, it is not born, it has no substratum. And Mahamati, the Tathagatas do not teach the doctrine that is dependent upon letters. As to letters, their being or not being is not attainable. It is otherwise with the thought that is never dependent on letters. Again, Mahamati, anyone that discourses on a truth that is dependent on letters is a mere prattler, because truth is beyond letters. You see where he's getting a little stern here. He's trying to get this. For this reason, Mahamati, it is declared in the canonical text by myself and other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that not a letter is uttered or answered by the Tathagatas. For what reason? Because truths are not dependent on letters. It is not that they are never never declare what is in conformity with meaning. When they declare anything, it is according to the discrimination of all beings. If Mahamati, the truth is not declared in words, the scriptures containing all truths will disappear. And when the scriptures disappear, there will be no Buddhas, Sravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. And when there is no one to teach, what is to be taught, and to whom? For this reason, then, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva is not to become attached to the words of the canonical texts. Mahamati, owing to the functioning of the minds of sentient beings, the canonical texts sometimes deviate from their straightforward course. Religious discourses are given by myself and other Tathagatas, arhats, fully enlightened ones, in response to varieties of depth of understanding, on the part of beings in order to remove them from the bondage of the sita, manas, and mano vijnana, the human mind that has the dualistic behavior of seeing everything as is or is not. See, this is the true meaning of the Dharma, by the way. When people tell you that the Dharma is the Buddha's teaching, that's a misleading and inadequate statement. Got something in my eye. The meaning of the words, what was shown, and it's also in the Lankavatara Sutra, but I'm not going to look for it right now. If you're a fan of any martial arts, you heard Bruce Lee quote from it. Basically, it goes like this. If somebody points to the moon and your focus is only on the finger that is pointing, you will never understand that glorious heavenly bodies that are being talked about. So people who focus only on the words are like people who focus on the pointing finger. They never see what the words are pointing to, the meaning, the experience of. Does that make sense? And that's what this, and this whole chapter pretty much is about this. Was there another part of this I think I wanted to read to you? Mahamati, the meaning is alone with itself, vivigata, and is the cause of nirvana. Words are bound up with discrimination, which is mind-made, and are the carrier of transmigration. Transmigration being the moment-to-moment existence of a duality, which is suffering, right? So to be liberated from suffering is nirvana. And that happens when you understand the meaning of the words, not the words. Meaning, Mahamati, is attained from much learning. And this much learning, Mahamati, means to be conversant with meaning and not the words. To be conversant with meaning means to ascertain the view which is not at all associated with any philosophical school, and which will be not only yourself but others, which will keep not only yourself from others from falling into the false views. Being so, Mahamati, this is said to be learned much in meaning. Therefore, let seekers for meaning reverently approach those who are much learned in it. But those who are attached to words as being in accord with meaning, they are to be left to themselves and to be shunned by truth seekers. Ouch! That's pretty severe. Because as you know, I'm going to stop there. Buddha's whole mission in life was to make liberation possible for anyone, no matter their state of being. Now remember I said this is the beginning of Mahayana, so he hasn't gotten to that point where he actually gives a solution that anyone can practice to attain enlightenment. But at that time, he was still trying to deal with the intellectuals of the communities he was living in at that time. And he had to bring them through this path of intellectualism and living in your head, and move them out of that to experience that their mind and head was really actually everything, not this dualistic self and other, but that there's absolutely no difference between every single energy in the universe. And I use energy purposely because matter is a dualistic item. So if you understand the meaning correctly, you will understand that what we perceive as matter, including ourselves, is only a temporary manifestation of energy. Everything is energy. Even no thing is energy. Ah, this is where the confusion sometimes come in reading Buddhism, is the first step that had to be ingrained in people's intellect of his time was what was duality. And it's not until the later and final teachings of his life that he explained that both the Buddha mind, the enlightened mind, the energy that is everything, is alive in you, even though you are in a dualistic form at this moment, and that both exist together. So you don't have to die in order to be enlightened. You don't have to let go of this mortal coil. All you have to do is appreciate the wisdom, the meaning of the words, and you're going to get that major aha at some moment. If you chase down the meaning and not get stuck on the words, you will get that aha, which is an awakening, and you will see with a Buddha mind, even though you're still trapped in this identity as a human. But what will shift is that all the veils of delusion that your human mind has, which we usually call the monkeys, right? They will cease to be the loudest conversation in your head, and you'll quiet them down to the point of, as close as you can, to cessation, and you will see, hear, and experience with all of your consciousnesses the truth, the reality, real reality of the process of life and phenomena and all things. Now, if you can actually quell and cease all the noise coming from your human mind, you will be Buddha. But let me tell you, that doesn't happen often. Okay? However, you can experience that enlightenment for moments. But the whole method of Buddhist practice is to lengthen that moment. As you study, even as you begin study, so many people who really throw themselves at Buddhism in the first 3 months experience all kinds of ahas. It's just that their human mind is still very loud and competes. And so they can't hang on to that aha for very long. Sometimes it's just as long as they're meditating. And as soon as they stop chanting and walk away, gone. The more they do it, the more it lasts. And as it lasts throughout the day, they'll have more aha moments just walking around because their Buddha mind is still active. And so that's what we're trying to do as practitioners of the Buddha method, is to simply quell the human consciousness more and more and allow, because it's already there, just allow the wonderfully quiescent voice of our Buddha nature to take control, to remove all the filters and curtains and defilements. Does that make sense? Now, I had to talk about this, and 18 minutes. Yeah, I think I'm going to make this an independent video, so I can label it so it becomes easy to find. So whenever you need to be reminded about the meaning of words, and how Buddhism works, and what will see, knowing this, whenever you read anything, hopefully you'll remember this conversation. You'll say, I'm having struggles reading this, and it's like doesn't really make sense to me, or it sounds circular, or whatever. And stop, shake your head, maybe chant a little bit to get that Buddha nature up, so that you don't have these obstacles, and then go back and read it again, and look for, as you read it, what does he mean? What's he trying to say? And I guarantee you, it'll come to you, especially if you chant about it. Okay? So, Remember this advice throughout your life, not just Buddhist teachings, but anything you come across that seems foreign or confused. Some things that confound you will probably make you laugh. And they may even, understanding their meaning may be absolutely useless. But that's a good thing to know. Okay? All right. I'm going to close this one, and then we're going to get into the 8 errors in 8 schools, which, by the way, this conversation is important because this explains, for one thing, why I'm reading it to you. And Nichiren's position, just like every other great scholar within Buddhism, and this is a key difference from Buddhist scholarship to being scholars in Buddhism. Follow? So if you're a Buddhist and you're participating in Buddhist scholarship, and you see that the schools around you are either attached to the words or use the words for their own meanings, their own purposes, and they're missing the meaning. As a Buddhist, that's very alarming, because now that's poisoning the pool, and now you're giving hundreds, maybe thousands or more people misinterpretation, and it's gonna crush their practice. It's gonna ruin their understanding of what they're doing, and most likely lead to what's the word I'm looking for? Disenchantment or whatever, words like to that effect. And they're not going to see the benefit in continuing their practice because they won't see it working in their lives. And then they'll not only go away from Buddhism, but they'll be very, very hard to bring back. And so this is adding to the suffering in the world. Okay. So Nichiren is known as a reformer because in his time there were 8 very powerful schools of Buddhism in Japan, and they all had different degrees of missing the point, not getting the meaning. And so he reached back with his scholarship through several scholars through the lineage of Japan and then into China, and even all the way back through Vasubandhu and Nagarjuna and Kumarajiva, and all the way back to Buddha himself, just like all the other scholars had done before him. And he was able to use that information to just tear apart these misnomers and misunderstandings of meaning in the other 8 schools around him, which is what made him quite disliked by those other organizations. And sometimes in the Kamakura period, when everything was ruled by samurai, really, shogunate, the landowners that were paying for these samurai and for the temples for their monks also took exception to Nichiren, and as a result, there were several attempts on his life. There's a book I really need to put on my website for you guys. It makes a very good reading, and I think I mentioned it before. I'll get to that in the next few days. Just reading about Nichiren's life and what he had to go through as he was cleaning up Buddhism once again, to get back to the correct words which exemplify the correct meaning, the Dharma in the meaning. It's pretty phenomenal story. Anyway, I'm going to end this video. Thanks so much for listening. If I didn't make anything clear in the process of this video, please say something. Email me, put it underneath the video in the comments. Let me know, and I will fix whatever mistakes I made and or elaborate more clearly. In the meantime, be well, be healthy, keep practicing. Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks so much. And now I wander around looking for the stop button.